Good evening to you all, and this is the title of my paper that I researched with my colleague Dr. Anipan Chaudhary. It's a very long study, so I'll go through it very quickly. Do we notice anything common over here? Someone who's a celebrated atheist becoming a Christian, a lot of evangelicals resisting vaccines, spreading the virus, Islamic State spreading the virus, and rogue nation states who are partners with the Islamic State getting access to powerful spyware. A kid from IIT Guwahati joining the Islamic State, and two US Army veterans joining the Islamic State. So COVID is causing a lot of neuropsychiatric manifestations, of which psychosis, neurosis, functional neurological disorder, depression, and PTSD are of interest because there's a lot of documentation in psychiatric literature that it increases hypnotic susceptibility. Cell phones are known to hypnotize you, and increased hypnotic susceptibility corresponds to a loss of free will. And we'll look at zombies and golems a little later, why we have used this term, but it's basically creatures who have lost all free will. And the aim of this paper is to explore if cell phones that are compromised with spyware can be used to hypnotize and control humans remotely. We did a proper literature review of several journals, research papers in this area from these sources. We had a previous study in this area, so we applied Frog's Luma design methodology in order to understand what are the problems with it and in order to improvise the interface. Additionally, we wanted to add a couple of new scopes in this study. So one thing that we found out is that the virus did not start in Wuhan, as the media made you think it was. It was already circulating in Europe way back before the Wuhan incident in March 2019. Wuhan started in November, but they managed to convince you that it was Wuhan. It wasn't. Peer-reviewed research like JSTOR, this is by Dr. Gary Ackerman. He works for the Department of Homeland Security. He had proved that neo-Nazi groups and the Islamic State were increasing the spread of said virus. People who run spyware companies, most famously the guys who with Unit 8200 who have access to Pegasus, and Cambridge Analytica, another company with deep ties to Unit 8200, were indeed spreading the virus. We have leaked emails as proof. This is another person who is associated with that. Her name is Melissa Street. Of all these conditions, FND is of interest because the phonic tics that are associated with it. For a layperson who doesn't understand this, FND is that cough that doesn't go away once you get COVID-19. And it's not just the cough, there is an involuntary, unconscious movement of throat clearing, sniffing, and sometimes even kissing noises. They have an emotional trigger, and that also has an external auditory trigger. Cell phones can hypnotize you. Your phone speakers can be turned into acoustic cyber weapons. So hackers can trigger the FND text by hacking into your phone's speakers. We'll look at hypnosis a little later, but 3 stages: induction, suggestion, and post-hypnotic suggestion. It has been useful to cure people with addiction and help breast cancer patients cope with pain, but it has been used by terrorists for nefarious means. Like I said, zombie or a golem is a creature that's devoid of all free will. This has been documented in psychiatry. We see it in parasitic infections, and by definition, all viruses are obligate parasites. The COVID virus resides in your body for over 2 years post-infection. Similar thing with the golem, but that's in myth. So the test had 2 parts. The first part involved using the Harvard susceptibility scale to see if people who had got COVID were highly hypnotizable or not, and then compare them with the control group. And this was the overview of that application. And the second part of the test was exposing these people to these frequencies of interest to see if these phonic tics, the involuntary movements, are being triggered or not using the external phonic tic. In this case, we were only focusing on auditory stimuli. It can be visual stimuli, tactile, or even olfactory stimuli that can trigger these involuntary movements. So, long story short, a COVID positive diagnosis increases your chances of getting hypnotized by 6-fold. And this was a very long study. It takes around 2 hours per person. So we were only able to do this for 12 people. That is a sonic frequency study. But for the Harvard scale, we found around 42 people. We tested the sonic frequencies on 12 people, of which we were able to trigger phonic tics in 11. We were also able to put almost everybody into a trance-like state. 432 hertz is the frequency. If you listen to it, you'll fall into sleep, and the trance state is the first stage in hypnosis. We can look at this person. At around 38 seconds, she begins to cough. Almost done. So the volume is a little less, but the person begins to cough. The conclusions is that there's a clear indication of a misuse of spyware for nefarious means, either for election interference, so that's what Cambridge Analytica does. They wanted Trump elected, and 90% of Americans have been infected with COVID, and guess what? Trump is the next president. Although, yes, there has been enough peer-reviewed research proving that what he did during COVID-19 was purely terrorism. He purposely got people infected. We would also like to highlight that this sort of research should exonerate Wuhan and the NIH, Dr. Fauci, and all of these guys, and specifically Bill Gates, from any blame of the pandemic. They shouldn't have been suspects to begin with. These people saved lives, and the nefarious actors managed to scapegoat them. Additionally, this is nothing new. Flu and respiratory viruses are known to cause this. FND is also triggered by other flu and cold viruses as well. And there's a CIA dossier in which they proved that the Soviets had experimented with long-distance hypnosis. We suspect it was using a combination of flu viruses, drugs, and hacked radios. Radio hacking is something that you guys can read through. We only have 42 subjects. We would like to conduct a larger study and publish it in a journal. That's the next thing that we're doing, and these are our references. I suggest you go through the first one. Dr. Gary Ackerman works for the Department of Homeland Security. Thank you.